Hey, it's Drybear. The mega update for Palworld with the brand new island is out, so I thought I'd do an updated breeding guide going over how to make all the best pals in the game, some tips and tricks for optimizing your breeding process so you can get a pal that does whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. So I have a full optimized setup for how you can make your own cake and process everything there, but I'll do that at the end of the video for the people that want to learn about breeding specifically and all of that, and then we'll go through the full setup to how to make your base and how to make everything work just right. And for anyone who's new to Palworld, let's do a quick overview of the breeding system so that we're not leaving anyone behind in the dust. Your pals come with a set of stats, and they can have up to 4 passive skills. These passive skills will be randomized when you capture a pal or when you hatch a pal from an egg. So they randomize all of that there. However, there is an option for breeding pals together, a male and a female, which will create an offspring, and that offspring has a chance to either generate its own random passive traits, just like it would if you captured it in the wild, or inherit 1 or 2 or more traits from either or both of the parents. Which obviously creates a system where you can start pairing pals up together to create offspring that they spawn eggs on a regular rate. Then you can hatch them in an incubator and start creating and selectively breeding to create the perfect pal for any purpose. At level 19 on your technology sheet, you will unlock the ability to put down a breeding farm, which will be this structure here. When you place it down, you will be able to put in 2 pals, and when you go up to it, you can see that there is a male and a female in a breeding pair. It'll tell you when they're ready. When the bar is done, it's just like a crafting station. It will create offspring eggs in the ground. There will also be a chest attached to the breeding farm, and inside of this chest, you have to put cake, partially because it helps fuel the parents to create their own offspring, but also it celebrates the birthday of that. So you can either buy the cake or buy the materials for the cake and then cook it yourself, or you can actually make all of these here in your base. You can use a ranch to actually create and drop honey, egg, and milk, and then you can use a farming method to create red berries and wheat, which you can then turn into flour and create your own cakes, and you're going to want to for an optimized setup. Now there's a large list of traits that every pal can have access to. Some of them are harder to get and some of them are not, and there's going to be an optimal setup depending on what you want to use it for. Based on the pals that are in your base, you may want one that has the work suitability. Maybe you want a pal that can do kindling really well, one that can do watering, one that can do lumbering or handiwork, planting, generating electricity. So you're going to create pals through a selective breeding process that serve that function. And then for combat, creating combat pals, you're going to want to stack together all of the traits and the best stats available to make those. So for example, for this Necromus, who is a dark main pal, I have given him Legend, which gives 20% attack, 20% defense, Musclehead, which is 30% attack, Ferocious, which is 20% attack, and Lord of the Underworld, which is 20% attack for all dark attacks, and he has all dark attacks. So it's a very optimal setup for a character like this to be able to do maximum damage. And just to have it on screen, apologies for the flashbang, but this is my pedigree list of the different mounts and different things that I have on my list that I've accomplished or are looking to do based on the traits that they have. Keep in mind that they have added in the new nocturnal trait here, which is super good. It means that the pal will work day and night, and for some functions like working on a ranch or powering generators, it can be extremely useful to have that new nocturnal trait. Most notably, I recommend getting a strong carry for every element. So I have like a element here for Celestial Emperor. This has Musclehead, Legend, Ferocious, Celestial Emperor. You also want to pick one up for Flame Emperor. You want to get one for Lord of the Seas so you can do your water damage. I also have one for Spirit Emperor, so on and so forth. For all the different elements, you're going to want to have a Earth Emperor, like for all of those, for your offenses. But you're also going to want some really good, strong workers as well. So for making eggs, I have my Mega Eggs, which is Lucky, Artisan, Work Slave, Sirius. I also have some ground mounts that I use for traveling on the ground with Swift, Runner, Legend, Nimble. Air mounts with the same traits for that as well. And then even my Mega Handies are also very useful in that they are able to Swift, Artisan, Sirius, Work Slave. They run around and they do all of the handiwork that moves around. They have 5 for handiwork and all these traits. They're amazing. They'll finish buildings in 1 second flat. Super useful. Now, most pals in the game, when you combine them with themselves, they will produce the same offspring. However, for most pals in the game, there are combinations of different pals that will produce specific offspring. So there's this combination calculator that you can use to actually decide which series of pals you want to get. So even for some pals that seem pretty far away, if you combine enough sequences along the way and carry over the traits as you go through the process, you can create almost any pal combination that you want. Now, are there tons of these resources online? The one I recommend is palworld.gg. It's a free site that someone has created that allows you to specify either the parent or the breeding pair, and you can swap between them. You can even look at the breeding tree as well. So say you wanted to go and create a specific one, you go to child pairing. Say you wanted to create like that Necromis that I had, that I just showed you, right? So you click Necromis, you realize that Necromis has to be bred within itself, which means that you're looking for specific traits that you want to combine for that. So those are going to be one of the rare pals. But say you wanted to do an Anubis that had really good traits on it, you have tons of options here, right? So maybe you get good traits on an Incineram and you combine that Incineram with an Elphidron, and that gives you the Nubis, and eventually after many attempts you get the right traits that you want and you can create that final form. Now you'll notice that a lot of the high-end pals like Frostallion or Necromis or any of the new Meteorite space pals like Selene or Xenogard, they can only be bred with themselves to create the same offspring. There's no way to create those, and historically it's been very challenging to get the right setup for those. So for like Frostallion, for example, getting a Frostallion that has all of these on it took a lot of effort because you can't really breed multiples into it. You have to keep going until you get the right, like randomly proc the right traits and keep breeding and keep breeding and keep breeding until you get the right combination, which takes a long time. However, there is a brand new pal that they added in the new update that makes this a little bit easier. And that's going to be the good boy right here, Yakumo. It's a brand new pal they just added in the new update, and his passive when you're riding Yakumo is whatever traits that Yakumo has, when you encounter pals like capture or hatch them, you will have a much higher chance of the pals that you encounter having the traits that the Yakumo has. So once you find Yakumo and then you can get on top and ride, then you can actually like breed a Yakumo for that purpose, and you can go try and capture these like space pals like Xenogard, you know, all of the space pals like Selene, Necromis, any of those. You can find the right traits on Yakumo and then you can use him as an option to actually capture those traits ahead of time. And if you don't have that, you just need to find a breeding pair and just keep breeding them until the random traits show up. Next, let's talk about how you're going to pair these together, because I've tried multiple different ways over the hundreds of hours trying to find the right combination of things that allow you to optimally get the drops that you want out of it. And my recommendation for that is to pair together the two that you have, and this is probably the one that drops the most that I've seen out of any of them. Is that it can be one parent that has three of the traits, exactly three of the traits that you're looking for, and an empty spot. So this is my Yormantide mother. She has Ferocious, Lord of the Sea, Legend, and an empty trait slot at the end. And then the father has the one missing trait and no other traits. This one, at least in my sample size, has produced the most amount of accurate and like most desired offspring from that pair. And I think it's because they have a chance to inherit fully from one parent, and then they have a really high chance to inherit at least one trait from the other, which means that your most likely scenario is likely that they inherit the traits from the mother and then they get one from the father, and since the father only has one, you get that fourth one there. Now again, reminder that when you actually hatch an offspring or catch a pal, it is the same exact process. They will have a chance to randomly get all of their traits or inherit the traits from their parents. So you're still going to get a bunch of garbage. So I just pulled a whole bunch of Yormantides. You can see that these still get red traits, random traits that didn't exist. But you can see there's also a bunch of them that mirror the parents one for one, or mirror the one parent with a trait from the other. So I think this is the most common and most successful combo, is three of what you want on one and then the one missing trait on the other. The next best thing is to do 2 and 2 or have repeats. So 2 and 2 would work as well. So if you had Musclehead Ferocious on one, and then you had Lord of the Sea Legend on the other, that would actually be a decent pair, probably just under this 3-1. And then you can also do duplicates as well, though it seems to be slightly worse than having exactly the traits that you want. So for example, you can see that this pair, the Yormantide father, has Musclehead Ferocious Legend. This one has Lord of the Sea Ferocious Musclehead. So they share Musclehead and Ferocious between them, and they have an extra one there, which helps kind of create that, which means you'll still be able to get the one you want, because it technically has all 4 of the traits you're looking for. They're just separated, and it's going to be a little less likely to land. Now let's talk about stats, the IVs of each pal. So let's take these for example. You can see that I have a whole bunch. I'm breeding a bunch of Yormantides maxed out for water for the new raid boss, the Blazamet Ryu, who is fire and dragon. So you would want ice and water. I'm gonna go with water for that. But let's look at all of these level 1 perfectly bred Yormantides, right? So these all have Musclehead, Legend, Ferocious, Lord of the Sea. You notice they all have those traits. However, if you look at their stats, this one has 187 attack, 69 defense, 185 attack, 69 defense, 188 attack, 68 defense, right? So you have all these different options. So not only do they randomize the traits that they get when they're born, but they also randomize their base stats. So their attack, defense, and work speed will be a random number in a range based on what a PAL they have, and then you're increasing that base value by the traits that are on top of it. So not only do you want the best traits, but you also want to pick the one that has the best stats. So this 188 attack is going to be much better than this 185 attack because it starts at level 1 with that 3 attack difference, and that's going to get scaled and scaled and scaled by percentages to be a very big difference towards the end in the multi-hundreds of attacks. Now, it used to be kind of a guessing game to figure out the exact IV stats of the PAL underneath everything. You'd have to basically keep them all at level 1 or the exact same level, and then compare the stats before you start modifying them, which is what I got used to doing. But 2 patches ago, they added in the ability classes. This is an ancient technology unlock. This is available at level 34. You just need ancient technology to unlock it. And when you equip this accessory, it allows you to see all of the base stats, or the IV stats, on like a scale of how good it is on each PAL when you look at it. So equip this and you can see the stats on there. It makes everything way easier, but until you have these unlocked, remember that you need Ancient Civilization parts, Paldium, and Refined Ingot, and the last piece is you need Ancient Civilization core, so you need to do a lot of raid battles and raid bosses in order to get these and unlock them, and same thing goes for the new Ultra Shield, the level 55 Ultra Shield, by the way. This requires 30 of those. You need to be doing a lot of raids, and that's why we're breeding a lot of raid pals. So you can either by breeding the same pals over and over until you randomly get the perks that you want, you can put those together, or you can go through a succession line by going on the calculator and the breeding tree and finding a sequence of pals that gets you the one that you're looking for. It's also worth mentioning that there are 3 different kinds of traits that only exist in specific pals in specific situations that you may want to actually utilize in your pals going forward. The first one is going to be Legend. This is an awesome trait that exists only on the world boss characters, so like the very end game super world boss ones. This one gives a 20% attack, 20% defense, and 15% move speed. So you use it on mounts, you use it on offensive fighting pals, that sort of thing. Now you can get one of the existing ones that have this, that drop Legend, like any of the end game world bosses will drop this. Then you can breed that out of them and put them on other characters and go through that breeding process. The other type is going to be the elemental bonuses. There is one for every element, and they come on the world bosses as well as part of that process. So for example, the Paldium, whatever his normal name is, I name them Monster Hunter names. Celestial Emperor comes off of him. Lord of the Underworld will come off of Necromus. For the Ice Emperor, you'll get that off of Frostallion, right? So you'll want to go around and collect those, and you can breed them off of those characters as well. The other unique trait is the Lucky trait, and this only comes off of the shiny pals that you find out in the world. You will hear a buzzing sound as you walk by, and they'll have particle effects coming off of them, and when you capture them, they will have the Lucky trait. This can only be transferred from parent to offspring. You can't randomly get Lucky from it, unless they've changed it in the last patch. I don't think they have. It has to come from a parent. So you need to capture at least one pal that has this and then transfer it over. And it does have attack 15%, which is pretty low, but it has 15% work speed, which for some of them can be very strong. So that's breeding in general and everything you need to know. Now let's go over the proper setup so you can be an insulated breeding base that has its all self-contained. You don't have to go around buying things. If you want to, you can go to vendors. The vendor I recommend is here in the small settlement. So this is the whole map. In the south area near the church, in the small settlement, there is a vendor that sells all the things that you need, eggs, milk, that sort of stuff. So you can come here and pick up all those things and use it in your base. But if you want to be self-sustained, what you're going to want to need, what you're going to want to build for your base is going to be this exact setup that I have listed here. So you want to have 2 to 3 ranches. So these are going to be these ranches that you add to your base. I believe they're like early on in the technology. Yeah, so level 5, you unlock the ranch. And when you put a ranch down on the ground, any of the grazing type pals, if they're in your base in the pal box, will come here and start grazing. And depending on which pal it is, they will drop something different. So the chickpeas will drop eggs, the mazzarinas will drop milk, and the bee guards will drop honey. So if you have them deployed inside of your base and there's a ranch nearby, they'll come up here and they'll start dropping eggs, milk, and honey, which you need to make the cakes in order to make the breeding farms work. So that's what we're looking for. We want to basically have that set up. And again, if you want to, if you're ready to do so, you can breed those to be even more effective at it. I would recommend, so I have these before Nocturnal came out: Lucky, Artisan, Work Slave, and Sirius. However, after the update, I would replace Lucky with Nocturnal, the new trait that allows them to work 24 hours a day, which is super nice. So you want the Chickpeas, the Mazzarinas, and of course the Bee Guards, and that gives you all the resources you need outside of the agriculture portion. Next, I would add 4 to 5 red berry farms. This can go up slightly, so all these numbers are with effective pals. This can go up slightly if you want to be a little bit more extra, but the reason that I have this many, so 5 to 6 wheat farms and 4 to 5 red berry farms, so these placed down here, is that not only does it create the ingredients that we need for cake, which is 5 flour, 8 red berries, 7 milk, 8 eggs, and 2 honey. We need the red berries and the flour, which is coming from the wheat fields. We need those down there for that, but also because as this gets farmed up, we have excess food as well. So this is enough red berries to make the cake and then also be able to feed the whole base that's there. You can take from this base and feed others. So if you have inefficient pals, you can add like 1 or 2 to these, but if you have decent pals, you can probably just do 4 red berry, 5 wheat, and then put those down, and then you'll have these constantly growing. And then what you'll want to keep these functioning is you will want 4 to 6 planting and gathering pals. I recommend the big lily girl here. I had call her Mega Plant now, but just give her something there. She has a great amount of gathering and planting, which works great. You'll want 2 to 3 watering. You can use Yormantide for that. He's very good at it, but sometimes he gets stuck, so I'll sometimes swap in Elfidrin Aqua for that, just because he's a little bit smaller and won't get stuck on things as much as the Yormantide will. And you also need 1 to 2 kindling pals as well. Yormantide Ignis is great for this. Very fast, very effective, but again, he gets stuck. If you want to replace him, you can use like one of the Suzakus, or you can use a Blaze Howl to swap that in, but you'll be doing that so you can keep your cakes running. You see, I basically have cakes running 24/7, so they're always combining, so that when we have these, right, I can go and I can max out my cakes, put a bunch of cakes down and start processing those, and then we can go and we can put them up in the breeding farm so that they can keep breeding around the clock. Next, you'll want 2 mills and 2 electric kitchens. The mills are required to grind up the wheat and turn it into flour for the cakes, and the electric kitchens are needed for taking all the ingredients you've collected, the flour, red berries, milk, egg, and honey, and turning them into cakes, and all of that will function through there. And lastly, I would have 2 to 3 breeding farms going, or at least placed down in the base that you can use at any time. I used to use 4, but I found that the 4th one, about 60% of the time, was inactive, so 3 just does it perfectly. You can have them going around the clock, and you need to have a good income of cakes coming in to keep these moving at once. So you can start out with 1 and just breed them along, but it's very useful to have 2 or 3 going at once so that you can have different kinds of pals, or you can start combining, like, if you're trying to create the mother and trying to create the father, or different stats that are pairing down. Maybe when you're first starting out with a brand new pal, like you're trying to get one of the space pals that have to be bred together, you want to have a whole bunch of them randomly creating traits so that you can collect those, select the traits, and then put them back into it, like take the offspring, put them back into the farm, and have them rotating until you get the traits that you're looking for. And that's it. That's the optimal setup, at least in my experience, for the pals, and of course the optimal setup for getting the traits that you want and how all the traits work. So I hope this was useful for you. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.